Learning about what's going on in the gut has initiated a lot of discussions about bowel movements. So, if you're sensitive, you've been forewarned. You cannot talk about the gut without talking about poop. So,
When my gut was at its absolute worst, I had a ton of mental symptoms: anxiety, depression, brain fog, fatigue. It just felt like I literally was living with a wet blanket over me, and just was always tired no matter how much sleep I got, was always anxious. It's kind of hard in general to talk about health without talking about the gut. For me, the gut is the real brain of the body. So the health of your skin, your hair, your brain, so many other body systems can all be traced back to the gut. And then almost 75% of your immune system is located in or associated with your gut.
People sometimes forget their skin issues, their eczema. It's not just your poop. That's not just your gut. Your brain fog, your fatigue, all of those could, not always, but could have a tie to your gut.
The road to gut healing involves a lot of 2 steps forward and 1 steps backward, and it can take just years and years.
Why do we hear about gut health and this, GI triad and all the gut brain axis? I think those words are more and more common. But what does that mean to have gut problems? Because I think it's more than people think.
Yeah, no, great question. It's kind of hard in general to talk about health without talking about the gut. For me, the gut is the real brain of the body. It has its own nervous system, which is directly linked to our brain via the vagus nerve. So the health of your skin, your hair, your brain, so many other body systems can all be traced back to the gut. If your gut is out of harmony, its nervous system will relay that to your brain, causing kind of your adrenal systems and your HPA axis to get overloaded over time. It's kind of a constant back and forth between the gut and the brain, and it's kind of hard to stop it once it gets going. And then almost 75% of your immune system is located in or associated with your gut. And so the gut microbiome helps to train your immune system to distinguish between harmful pathogens and beneficial substances. So it kind of acts as the great decider of things going on in your body. And so when your gut health is compromised, it can lead to autoimmune conditions, increased infections, chronic inflammation throughout the body. And then, as we know, inflammation can lead to intestinal barrier dysfunction, which can lead to all GI issues that people have. And that's with the skin, the brain, and so many organ systems. And so basically, the gut is the command center of the body, almost more than the brain. And it has a lot of ties right into that healthy, diverse, and strong microbiome.
Got it. Yeah, I think, people sometimes forget their skin issues, their eczema. It's not just your poop. That's not just your gut. Your brain fog, your fatigue, all of those could, not always, but could have a tie to your gut. Um,
Absolutely.
we had a few questions around how does someone know if their issues may stem from the gut? Maybe you can start with the more subjective. Stephanie said she is interested in the relationship between gut health and constipation. So maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, no, it seems like it would be a simple question or a simple thing to know, like, how do I know if the gut is causing the issue, but it's really very complex. So the enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system of our gut, kind of plays quarterback for all of the gut functions. And that includes motility, secretion, and blood flow in the gut and in the digestive systems. And so, kind of for constipation in general, this plays directly into that. And hormones, surprisingly enough, are also playing a really big role in constipation and bowel movement. So serotonin, which most people have heard of, was one of the most important hormones in the body and in the gut. And about 95% of your body's serotonin is created in the gut, not the brain. And so serotonin, dopamine, and a few other gut-specific hormones are involved in the actual contraction, bile release, and motility in the gut, which all play a hand in your bowel movements. And so with any of these being slightly off, that can cause constipation, that can cause diarrhea. When everything's working kind of as it is, this motility, the secretions, the contractions, all of this is working kind of in harmony and flowing as it should be. And when just any of these are slightly off, that's when you see these issues with constipation. And so that's kind of all of this to say that bowel movements are really directly tied to the gut, but it isn't always as simple as the food you eat.
I've heard this enteric nervous system, right? And you hear like enteric coated. And so I was wondering why that's the word that we've used to relate to the gut. And I asked GPT quickly, and it actually enteric means it's from the Greek word enteron, which means intestine. So that's now when you hear
That
enteric
makes
nervous
sense.
system, it's because it's your nervous system of your gut, your intestines. And that's also why like enteric coated or enteric bacteria. So just a fun fact for people to remember.
Definitely.
We love it. I actually chat all the words that could be used for the word poop before this. So we're we're,
There's some good ones.
we're different. So okay, yes. So beyond typical gut issues like constipation, diarrhea, are there other things to look out for as signs of gut dysfunction? I know I've come to you and been like, I'm bloated, my stomach hurts. I've given you a lot of signs as well. But yeah, what are other things people could look out for?
Yeah, great question. I mean, speaking personally, when my gut was at its absolute worst, I had a ton of mental symptoms, anxiety, depression, brain fog, fatigue. It just felt like I literally was living with a wet blanket over me, and just was always tired no matter how much sleep I got, was always anxious, kind of this heightened state. And I was also really prone to having these rashes, kind of all these huge rashes that would show up all over my body almost out of nowhere. And it would take me months and months and months to get rid of them. That, as well as my sleep, was completely off. And so there's a lot of mental signs that you can look out for because, like I was saying earlier, the brain and the gut are kind of talking to each other constantly and feeding off of each other. And so if your gut is out of sync, your brain's really going to be out of sync too. And then there's a lot of skin issues, acne, hives, anything like that kind of related to the skin can really be tied right into the gut, especially because if you have leaky gut or kind of tight barrier dysfunction in your intestinal linings, food is going through there causing immune system activation in your body, in your bloodstream, which is going to show up in all different ways, especially on the skin. And even one that's maybe makes sense, but is kind of, I don't hear talked about a lot, is kind of a constant bad breath that you just can't get rid. Like you brush your teeth and immediately like you still have bad breath. So that one too is another sign to kind of look out for.
We had quite a few questions, or at least a couple questions about how do you like what lab tests do you recommend, or what kind of microbiome testing are you looking at that you think are the most comprehensive or the most beneficial. So, do you want to speak to just from the testing side? What are you finding is effective?
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's so many tests out there. One I really like, one we use here at the office a lot, is the GI effects test by Genova. It's just a really good comprehensive test, not only looking at the diversity of your microbiome, but looking at like parasites, inflammation, how you're metabolizing food, all things like that. And in the similar vein, there's a test that I like as well called the GI map. It's an extremely similar test with little differences, but those are two that I know for sure are really good and provide a lot of good information. And then Vibrant America, a company we work with quite a bit, has come out with something called a wheat zoomer, which is kind of a specialty test in line with GI issues, but it really looks at how your body is handling all things gluten. I know Courtney has had some interesting results from that wheat zoomer, but it's a really good test to do in tandem, especially if you're looking for some food sensitivity stuff.
This term leaky gut gets thrown around a lot. I guess first you could define what that is, but then maybe is that part of this why they're showing sensitivity to everything?
Yeah, great question. So leaky gut is literally kind of leaky intestines. So your intestines are comprised of these tight junctions that are kind of really tight like this. When everything's working fine, it acts as kind of a filter. It lets the things like the nutrients, the things it wants, it lets it through those tight junctions and keeps the bacteria, the pathogens, all of that in there. And so through inflammation, through parasites, through whatever it may be, these tight junctions just kind of slowly loosen. and that is leaky gut. It's where that filter is kind of broken, and now bacteria, food particles, and other things can go through those intestinal walls without or by bypassing that filter first. And so that's kind of what leaky gut is. And then yeah, I think that plays a part in some of these tests as well, because if you have leaky gut, like the food you're eating is kind of creating these immune responses anyway, not because you're sensitive to it, but because your body is actually kind of fighting it because it's bypassing your gut in a way that it shouldn't.
Well, so I know we also had a bunch of questions about probiotics and prebiotics and sporebiotics and all the biotics. And I know there's a lot of confusing information out there. So specifically, both Lene and Julie, they asked about probiotics. Are probiotics always warranted on a daily basis, or are prebiotics more important to start with? Now, Lene said there's so much confusion about it. I heard you shouldn't take them if your gut's compromised. Um, Thank you so much for addressing these questions. That was cute. She wrote so with like 8 O's. So, can you first start by explaining what's the difference between a prebiotic versus a probiotic?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is a very confusing topic, especially because like you go to the store and there's like, oh look, 16,000 different probiotic supplements and like prebiotic supplements, all the things. But prebiotics are essentially just food that the beneficial bacteria in your gut feed off of and need to maintain this healthy balance. You can kind of think of it as the fertilizer for the garden that is your microbiome. Um, Whereas probiotics are actually living microorganisms, usually bacteria or a yeast, and those are there to help restore and maintain beneficial bacteria balance in the gut. They can help promote the flourishing of beneficial bacteria while also keeping the harmful ones in check. And again, this is all with like a healthy, functioning gut. And you can think of them more as the soil in the garden of the gut.
Mhm.
For people who have a lot of gut stuff going on, a lot of GI symptoms, bloating, gas, fatigue, all of that stuff, I really don't recommend pre or probiotics. They can often worsen symptoms for people who have IBS, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or other similar digestive conditions, because these people already have really disrupted and altered gut microbiomes, and they really don't have an internal environment that's kind of set up to allow the pre and probiotics to do their job. In many of these instances, the bacteria are kind of in the wrong place anyway. They're in the wrong amount, too much or too little, and they're in places we don't want them to be. And so by feeding them with prebiotics, you're kind of throwing gas on the fire. And by adding more probiotics, you're kind of adding more bacteria to where we don't want more bacteria. And so it's a really slippery slope and a hard one to kind of manage when you do have a lot of these symptoms. And people who have these imbalances already, bringing in pre or probiotics can trigger inflammatory responses. If your gut's already compromised and you already have kind of these heightened immune issues, adding in more food with the prebiotics or just more bacteria in general can really add more complexity to this whole disrupted symptoms or system. And so for me, people who have this, I think underlying all the are addressing the underlying issues first is going to be the more important thing than trying to counteract it with these pre and probiotics.
Does BPC 157 in a pill form still work for gut health, or is the shot better, the injection better?
Yeah, great question. So BPC, which actually stands for Body Protective Compound, the name says a lot. I really like it in the oral form for digestive health. As an injection, it helps with inflammation and the gut, but it's really good for tissue repair, ligament repair, kind of wound healing. It's way better in that realm. Whereas the oral BPC 157 promotes mucosal repair, it stabilizes the gut barrier, reduces intestinal inflammation, and it also supports vascular and neuromuscular function in the GI tract. So I think that's a really good oral supplement to take for the intestines and the GI tract.
And what about David? Just because she mentioned it, she's under a lot of stress. Like
Mm,
obviously, stress probably has a big part of your gut health too. And we talked about neurotransmitters, and so can you like, I mean, getting her stress in order, right, and
yeah.
starting to too. Things like that could help
Yeah,
too.
so, stress is, as we know, a very complex thing. It's never really one thing at a time. I know when I was dealing with my journey, I like, especially just coming out of the restaurant industry where my entire life was stress, what I worked with my practitioner was to really focus on my adrenal system, which had just been completely shot. My cortisol was a mess. My HPA access was just terrible. So there's the supplement side of kind of working with your adrenal system. I also, shout out to mental health. I went and started seeing a therapist to kind of work in tandem with, okay, I'm trying to like do therapy on my gut. Let's also do therapy on my mind to help with this. And then I started journaling, trying to meditate, anything that can really help alleviate that stress. Because there's some stress that you just can't deal with, that the job stress, the life stress, but any moment you can take to help lower that, whether it's just taking 5 deep breaths and be like, okay, let me just reset. It goes a long way. But, the stress is treating that as almost as complex as the gut, but doing anything you can to address that, even internally with your adrenal system, is going to go a long way.
David, do you have any final closing remarks and just what you want our listeners to take away overall and me?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, really just gut health is a journey, y'all. Like I never would be in the position I am in if I didn't get lucky and find this amazing practitioner. Shout out to Jen Marshall. She was the first person to give me answers and like give me hope and give me a way forward. And so I cannot stress enough the importance of finding a knowledgeable practitioner that you trust. After that, it all comes down to discipline, expectation, and sacrifice. The road to gut healing involves a lot of 2 steps forward and 1 steps backward, and it can take just years and years. My hardest obstacles always involved when I would get ahead of myself or have unrealistic expectations for timelines and results. I had to give up a lot of things like sugar, alcohol, almost all my meals I couldn't eat out. But like everything in life, nothing is permanent. It's all just kind of a moment in time. And you won't be thinking about the hard times when you're able to do and eat all the things that you love again. Those obstacles really are just stepping stones and notches on the belt of life for things that make you stronger and make you grow more as a person. And what's life without a little struggle? You are all capable of so much more than you know. And the sweetest victories in life are the hard earned ones. So don't ever give up because the future you is waiting for you at the end of this long road of healing. And it's all worth
Yes,
it.
yes, I can do this.
You got it, Shannon.
Shannon, hop on the wagon, girlfriend. We
Come
are we
join
are on a
us.
journey together. Join us gut health healing
Yes,
people over
yeah,
here.
yeah. Thank you so much, David.
Absolutely.